maybe I want to talk about one of my role models. Like, I went through life without too much role models. I always was pretty self-reliant, self-improving, self-evaluating. I did not have much role models. Of course, your parents are always, and to some extent, your role models, but I think in my case it was a bit less than for other people. Maybe I was more critical already on your younger age and more challenging of how they looked the world, because I realized how they saw the world was not really in my interest, or how I saw the world, and or how I would see the world. So in that sense, it was more difficult for me to um, actually relate to somebody that was already in the way I was going, or on the path I wanted to take. So in that sense, I did not really have, think, that much role models throughout the first years of my life. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Maybe there were some friends, but I would not say they were role models for me. But everybody had their little input, and I gained some insights and knowledge from everybody, and that's made me it's pretty weird to say, but a role model for myself, I guess. Like, I had this idea of how I wanted to become, and the only thing stopping me was myself. So I tried to improve on myself, tried to become the best me, and along the way, certain things worked out for me, certain things did not work out. So I would not say I'm the perfect role model for myself. I don't think anybody can be, unless you already tested and challenged your own ideals and thoughts against other people. But yeah, in later in life, I actually found, or I actually have a role model. I would say it's pretty. I would not say childish or less worthy, but for me, my role model is a streamer, like a Twitch streamer. It's a pretty famous one, actually the most famous one, I think. xQc. It's a French Canadian streamer that actually has insane hours of streaming. Like, he streams like 12 till 16 hours a day, few days a week. So I think 4 or 5 days a week. That's a that's a lot of hours streamed, and that's actually his work, I guess. Like, um, Mats also knows the xQc is one of my role models. You know, it's funny to say, but he actually is the only role model I can think of. Ah, nice, nice. So let me talk about my role model first. I think xQc is very genuine. You get the feeling immediately when you hear him. He just says what he wants to say. He doesn't cater to some people, or he doesn't want to give you a certain um, idea or motivation that is not really his own. He always says what he believes, and he's not gonna falter from that. He's very aware of his own position and his influence, so he doesn't. Yeah, he knows when he says something, he's gonna impact a lot of other people, and he knows to whom he's talking, to who his audience is, what he wants to achieve. So my third idea I like, or my third um, perspective I like about xQc, is that he strives for the best content. Like, he knows what he's doing, is that he's on top of his game, and he tries to challenges. He tries to every time he tries to put up the bar a bit higher for himself, and tries to get new content or something better that we don't know about yet. That could be the next thing. And I think this is very good for people that are in the front tier and being at the top of their game. They're trying to improve themselves, and they're not content with who they are. Like, they always want to get better, and they want to strive for the best for themselves. Um, what do you think about that? Maybe we should go like back and forth about each point.
I'm not that invested in xQc, but I sometimes watch videos in when I'm on the YouTube, in the YouTube rabbit hole. For me, he's like a reactor. Eh? He reacts to stuff. He sometimes plays games. I guess you know him better than me, but I can see why he's your role model. You know, he's just like so upfront. He doesn't. How do we say it, like in the Netherlands? In Netherlands, we doesn't wind around the bush.
Yeah, it doesn't beat around the bush.
Doesn't beat around the bush. But yeah, there are a lot of like internet figures that are now these days role models. Like one of my role models was also an internet figure for me, and that's like Jordan Peterson. He was actually like also like a second father figure for me. Like when in times
Okay.
of needs, when I had like not the best relationship with my father the last couple of years, but now it's actually really good and it's stabilized. But I don't have the time to get into that at the moment. Like Jordan Peterson just came and he just
And
he's
what about him was like, this is what I'm looking for, or this what was
look.
I was missing,
I think
or
we're living in an area right now where a lot of people, a lot of young males, don't have like a sense of purpose in life. They just they're so conflicted with themselves. They don't know what to do. What is actually, I mean, nobody knows like the meaning of life. Everybody has an own perception of that. But he gave me like some guidance, some just like some. It started like with some disciplines rules, like make up your bed and all these like maybe some corny shit, but
he
it
gave some straight examples of what of steps you should take to
yeah.
make a meaningful life,
Yeah,
I
because I
think.
was also slacking in my life, like with the whole thing, and I was also maybe from my 20 to my 22, 3 was like a profound smoker, like a man, a
Same,
habitual smoker.
the same age with Thibaut, I think.
Yeah,
It
it's
was a
possible
similar, it was
we
the
were
same.
stoners together, and after that, like I just like had like the feeling like I get my life together, and maybe then Jordan Peter just came to the mix, and I listened to him. He was like for me like a man of logic, man of like making sense. You can talk about like the whole conflict he's now getting into with the whole transgender movement, but
I
I'm
think
not talking.
he's always been like very edgy, I would say. Like he says his words very carefully, but he also doesn't want to hold back, you know?
No,
He just says if something is bad or wrong in his opinion, and he's not ashamed of that. And I think that's very valuable
true. That's
in
what
a
we
role
need.
model.
We need the thinkers in life. We need the thinkers that strive to not like to gain conflict, but like the critical thinkers of separate of different ideas and who go against who swim against the current. We need these kind of people in the world. That otherwise we're all just like conforming and we're all like little sheep. And there's like one guy on the top who controls it all. But yeah, that's more like some matrix shit. But like,
No, that's very true. I think the role models these days very, um, like you said, swim against the stream a bit. Like we have this part that we're all getting projected from society, and they are like, hey, we should not really follow this like this because the end point is not where we want to be. The end point is where you want to be, and they
yeah.
put more focus back on the individual, I think, and that's very valuable, especially with Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, he's very good at that. I would say I also listened a lot to him.
Okay.
I did not see him as a role model yet, or until now,
Mm-hmm.
because for me, he makes very good points, but he also sometimes hits it a bit wrong for me. Like comes from a different angle that I'm seeing it,
Yeah.
and
What do you mean by that? Like if you can.
um, I'm not sure about the specific example anymore, but sometimes his invalshook, the way he approaches a subject, is from a side I would not approach it, and I could not identify with the way he approaches it.
Yeah,
That just
I
yeah,
don't. I also have like. I don't agree with everything he says, but
I think that's important with role models. Like especially for example Andrew Tate, a lot of people say it's his
shout out
role
to Andrew
model.
Tate.
Don't shout him out.
He's in prison. Free him.
Uh, the memes are funny, but it's also like a bit of brainwashing. You know, people buy into a role model, and then they believe everything the role model says ought to be true. Like, oh, he said this thing that I believe in, so the other things he says must also be true.
Yeah.
And I think that's very dangerous. For example, Andrew Tate did have some good points, like men are moving away from their traditional values and what we
Mm.
biologically aspire to be as a man, and
Yeah,
we should guard that a bit. But also, he's saying a lot of shit that doesn't
it doesn't make
sit
sense.
well and
Yeah,
that
yeah, of
doesn't make
course.
sense. And I think that's difficult for people, especially young people, um to discriminate, or how you say it, like make an onderscheid,
Yeah, a distinction.
a
You mean?
distinction about what is true, what he's saying, and what is not true, and what should you believe and what you not should not believe.
Look, I think like young people nowadays, I think we are like now old enough to like make, like to think critical about everything we see. But like young people, like people in their when they're 16, 17, or 15, like they have their phone, they have the whole World Wide Web in their hands, and I think it's just so difficult for them like uh, to get a sense of actually what is true in the world and what is not true in the world.
Yeah,
And then they just like get overloaded by a lot of information, and
a lot
yeah.
of short snippets of information, like you
Yeah,
should
but
do it this way, and a lot
mm,
of us have to learn it this way. Like we are in a digital age, and most of us are on the screen most of the time in our lives.
yeah,
So the only way we really learn about life most of the time is through some screens or something, and that's pretty sad. But it's also just how we're evolving as a species, and I think that makes it more difficult because we all can read and we can all understand what people are saying, but we don't know if it's true until we go outside and actually experience it to be true. I think
yes.
that's very difficult now.
I fully agree with that. I have one more minute, so I'll make my end conclusions from this podcast. But what I want to add to that is actually is just if I like that's I've been thinking this about a lot lately. Like if I have children, like I will literally like prohibit them from using screens till the age of 12. I just think
You think it's gonna be possible?
I are the parents. You can decide if they don't have like just don't give them a phone till
You
till
can
till they're
decide, but you
12 years
also
old.
cannot.
Yeah, true. When they're in school, they will be using
Children
screens.
will give
Yeah,
you ultimatums, and you know they can be pretty bad
yeah,
ultimatums.
yeah,
You
true.
don't want
Yeah.
to think about the ultimatums, I think. Especially when all their friends have a phone and you're the only kid without a
Yeah,
phone.
and then I hate you, daddy. When you hear those words, they like you're broken like a father, but that is just like something.
Or running away, or worse.
I had
You
a
don't.
conversation with my boss because he had some troubles. Like his son is getting like 13 years old, and he's like getting into the rebel phase. And he said like the actual words like "I hate you, dad."
Damn.
And it's funny that I had a conversation with my boss because when I was like getting into it, like okay, yeah, he doesn't mean it like that way. He just want to get something out of you. It's maybe some materialistic stuff, and it's like maybe a screen, it's maybe a PlayStation and stuff. But yeah, I think it's it's an interesting topic to get on the podcast, and maybe it is a topic like what actually these screens are doing with our minds and how we are evolving to like we are evolving like to when screens are like just part of our life. It is part of our life at the moment.
They are
but
like.
they are.
Let's all be real. Most of our workers work on the screen
Yeah,
multiple hours a day.
yeah, it is.
When is the last time you haven't touched the screen in the whole
Dude,
day?
I don't know. Maybe like when we go like to a weekend out, but no, we have our phones with us. Huh?
Phones.
Phones with us.
It's we cannot escape it.
In
So
2 weeks, I have like a challenge run with Katunasi, and then we have to drop our phones and we just have to walk for 3 days just with a
really,
compass and a map. So that will be the day that I will be not
Damn.
touching screens for two
I think
days.
for me it's not gonna happen until actually like such
Yes,
a
it's
challenge.
mandatory, you know. Okay, but I have to go.
Yeah.
I was actually
Thanks.
at the screen.
Thanks for joining, man.
I really want to join next time. So
Yeah, I talked about ideas. But I don't know about the copyright kind of part of it. So
right, Mattsu out.
back to my role model xQc. So he's kind of in line with who he is. He knows what he wants. He knows how to get the best out of him. He understands the atmosphere, the environment where he's in, so the internet, and how people are now developing parasocial relationships. So basically, you're developing your friendship or relationship, whatever, with people you've never seen, only seen through a screen. Just as just as I'm admiring him a bit, this is kind of parasocial relationship. Like he doesn't know about my existence, but I know a lot about his existence and how he's living, and that makes it very difficult. And this will only grow in the future. Like people will see each other more on screens and only on screens, and the real life interaction will always or will be diminished. And maybe I will be wrong and it will be different in the future, but I think this is only gonna be increasing. That's just how I see it. Maybe I'm a bit pessimistic. Um, Another thing I like him, he plays an active role. So when something happens in the atmosphere and in the environment, for example, certain streamers get exposed for misusing underage girls or whatever, he always has an opinion on it. He doesn't hold back. He says his opinion, where he thinks it should go, what should be happening. And he's not always right, but he plays an active role. He's not like sitting back watching the thing unfold and then be like reacting to it. Um, like Matt said, he is now a bit more of a reactive type because he knows the content or the easy content lays there, but he always takes part in the things he should be taking part. He knows his role and he knows the influence he has, so he always plays an active role in that. Um, the last thing that I want to tell about him, I know I'm a bit praising him, and many people don't really care about him or don't know about him, but for me, my role model is somebody who says his thoughts but also knows when he's wrong. So he can have a strong opinion or he can have an active role, and if he's getting convinced that he's not right or that it's not the right thing to say, then he will change his opinion and he will say to everybody that look, the thing I said before was my initial idea, but I'm kind of wrong about it in this and this and this way. And then he kind of evolves his idea or updates his idea to be a more concrete or more in line with the truth. And that's really something everybody should do. But yeah, I don't think that's a trait or a skill that everybody has, especially the influencer role models. They just like to say their thing, and if anybody doesn't agree with them, they say it's wrong or they just ban it or whatever. They don't want to hear anything about it. So yeah, that was my role model. I think doesn't really says too much about him, but it just the traits that I admire in a role model and what I'm looking for, and I think subconsciously everybody looks for this kind of role model. Maybe it's more I want to say dumbed down, but maybe more less obvious what he's trying to do. For example, I think Andrew Tate is not the real he doesn't change his opinion, so sometimes they will not have all these traits, but I think most of the role models kind of have a few of these traits. I think these are the more important ones to have as a role model, and some of them use them, some of them abuse them. Like if you know your environment, you know the people following you, you know they're all males, young males that are trying to search or find their lives, and it's pretty easy to cater to them to say what they want to hear and not really say the things that are true or that really helps the people get better or take the next steps in their life. I think that's very misleading sometimes, the way role models act. What are the red flags that indicate someone may be a negative role model, and how can individuals protect themselves from their negative influence, especially when they don't notice the effect that role models has on them? I think this also kind of relates for everybody that has been active or like knows about the sphere or what Andrew Tate is doing. I think this one is a clear example. Like he has some good points, he has some things that people relate to, but there are also many red flags that people just ignore or sweep under the rug and think that it doesn't really affect them or they don't really like they say, "Oh, I love Andrew Tate," but sometimes they're also aware that some things he says are not good, and they don't talk about those points. They just do like they don't exist and sweep them under the rug. And I think that's also very bad. You should always hold your role models accountable or be critical about your role models. So how can individuals protect themselves from the negative influence? I think it all starts from, yeah, realizing it yourself. Like that's the first step, I guess. If you don't realize or don't, if you're not critical about your own role models, then I don't know what you're doing. Like you're just listening and believing the first person that says something good, then I should be a role model maybe for everybody here, because I hope there is something that you might have related to, and if that's true, then I'm the perfect role model for you. And I think I would never say that in that way, because as you've seen, I've also lost a lot of money. I've been addicted, or I am addicted to a lot of things. Um, okay. So first of all, if how can individuals protect themselves? Be critical. Like the only way I can tell, or that people can tell that a role model is not in line with what they want to be, is being critical. You should not blindly take values or hold ideas that other people talk about. Like you should always evaluate: does it fit in my lifestyle? Does it fit in my perspective of life and where I want to achieve or reach? And if that doesn't fit, then you should not add it. And sometimes one thing a role model says you can add, and another thing you cannot add. It's depends really on what kind of role model it is. But you should never like blindly accept everything a role model says. And what are you taking my mouse? Katteke. Um. So yeah, especially when they don't notice the effect a role model has on them. This more difficult. I think people that don't know what other people have effect on them, this can be a role model or even friends or family. Yeah, I just think they're not critical enough in life. They don't realize that they are part of life. They're just an NPC in my idea, or my what I would say. They don't have an authentic idea or an authentic mind, and they don't have authentic answers. They just respond in ways that they're programmed to respond, and that's just not how you should live life. You should always think for yourself, be critical, and yeah, be authentic. Be your own you, be your own hero in your story. And if somebody, another NPC, tells you something that is not very in line with what you believe, then don't believe it. You should not care about if xQc says to me, "Oh, all women are bad." I'm not gonna be like, "Oh yeah, that's true. All women are bad." Like I would say, like, dude, you're kind of tripping balls, and I don't know if you're my role model anymore.